If you want to get lean, staying in a calorie deficit is the most important skill you need to master, especially when we consider that the more quote-unquote stubborn areas, such as your belly fat, take the longest to lean out. And staying in a deficit for a couple of weeks is simply not enough time to make a significant difference for most people. And this is why in this video, I'm going to share with you 5 tips that will help you stay in a calorie deficit consistently so you can finally hit that 12% or 15% body fat and reach your goal physique. So without any further ado, let's dive into the first tip, which is leveraging digital meal preps. Here's what I mean by this. Take a whole day or a whole week and then using an app like MyFitnessPal, map out all the meals you're gonna have in that period of time. And by doing this, you're essentially running thought experiments, which is a very powerful tool used by some of our greatest thinkers like Albert Einstein to simulate the future and then anticipate what are the most challenging situations that you're gonna find yourself in. For example, do you have dinner with family coming up? Write down what you normally eat. Is it a weekend date night with a couple of drinks? Add up all those options in your log based on your past experience. Is it lunch at work? Well, you know which options are available and what you normally go for. And once you have it all written down and broken down, you'll be able to see exactly which meals and days get you off track and what you need to adjust to hit your numbers, your calories and macros. And once you have your new adjusted plan, all you need to do is let MyFitnessPal decide what you're gonna eat and you don't have to think about it anymore. And this way you're using the power of pre-deciding and you're saving a lot of mental bandwidth so you can work on other things in your life while still being consistent with your nutrition. Now, the second tip that's gonna help you stay in that deficit is log it before you eat it. Earlier in my fitness journey, I would often find myself in a situation at the end of the day where I would quote unquote run out of calories and my macros were off. I wasn't getting enough protein and I would typically overeat on carbs and fats. And if you have the same problem, here's my recommendation. Let's say you want to have a snack. Before you eat that snack, add it to your food app and see if it fits your daily intake. A lot of times you're going to realize that you may need to adjust your portion size or you need to move some things around or that it's simply not worth it because you can have something else. And this one simple habit of logging it before you're eating it can do wonders to prevent a lot of mindless eating. This is really important, especially when you're starting your journey and you're in that process of recalibrating your eating habits. Eventually, you're gonna get a good sense for your food intake and you won't have to do this as much, but early in the journey, this is a game changer. Now, moving on to the third tip that's gonna help you stay in a calorie deficit, which is if you can't control it, then don't keep it around. Technically, you can eat pretty much anything you want, and as long as you're in a calorie deficit and as long as you get your protein, you will lose body fat. And if you can eat that one piece of chocolate and put it down, that's great. But a lot of people who struggle with losing body fat also struggle with moderation. And with some foods, it's not exactly a fair fight. We have labs with some of the smartest engineers in the world working on creating the tastiest and most irresistible foods that you can imagine. And it's very difficult to moderate these foods when you've been calorie restricted for weeks and months. And it's not just you who struggles with this, it's most people. We haven't evolved to have such quick and easy access to an abundance of high calorie density tasty food. And one of the keys to staying consistent with your calorie deficit is to have that high level of self-awareness and to know when you need to adjust your food environment to reduce exposure to these temptations. And if you have certain foods that are very difficult to control, well, my advice is to move them out of sight, make it harder to access, and save them for special occasions. And it's not about removing it forever. It's just that in this moment, the timing is not right. You're vulnerable, your food drive is high, your calorie budget is limited, and you've already had this food before and you'll be able to have it in the future. So it's not on some kind of forbidden list. It's just you being smart with your food environment to make sure that you can stay consistent with your calorie deficit. Now, tip number 4 is take your mind off dieting as much as possible. We all had those experiences where the day just flies by really quickly. You're super busy doing a lot of other things. You're hitting the like button on all my videos. You're not even thinking about food. Food is fuel, you eat and you move on. And this is something we can leverage to improve consistency. Often, the more you think about food choices, your calories, your macros, the more food focused you become and the more difficult it gets. And this is one of the reasons why simple rules such as intermittent fasting works so well, because you know you have a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour eating window. When you're fasting, food is off the table. It's simple and straightforward. A busy, occupied, engaged, and focused mind isn't concerned too much about food in the moment, and this is something you want to take advantage of. And if you can combine staying busy with some simple rules, and tip number 1 from this video, where you're going to pre-plan your meals, you can really reduce that mental load required to manage your diet, which will make it a lot easier for you to stay on track. Now, tip number 5 is to have your fallback system in place. It's naive to expect the journey to be a linear streak of wins. It's very far from that. And it's easy to do the right things when you're feeling very motivated and when you have a lot of momentum. And it's much more difficult to do that when you're spread too thin and there's dozens of things competing for your attention. And this is why it's so important that you create a fallback system with your non-negotiables, and this is your minimum that you can do to stay on track when life gets tough. For example, focusing only on calories and protein, getting your vegetables with each meal, taking a morning walk, doing 3 workout sessions per week for 30 minutes. That's a minimum system that will enable you to sustain your habits while not being overwhelming, and it may be the best you can do right now. And then from there, you can actually scale that system, because it's much easier to build on existing habits than it is to start from scratch when you have no momentum. And motivation is great when you have it, but it's not an excuse for when you don't. And the true key to success is discipline with planning and being able to do things whether you feel it or not. And what's going to help you with that discipline is making sure you hit that subscribe button below, notifications by hitting the bell icon if you want to work with me. Details for coaching on the description below. Also leaving a very helpful video here for you at the end. So check out that video, and I'm going to see you right there.